Welcome back to the Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Ponte, where we will hear stories of incredible people thriving against all odds. And my hope is that we can all see how life is always happening for us, even when we are the less than 1% chance. Hey, welcome back to Against All Odds, the Less Than 1% Chance podcast with your host, Maria Aponte. I am here with a friend of mine. I am so pumped for this call. I met her in person this past May, and she was at the same mindset conference where I decided that I was going to do this podcast. And we know each other through the community that we're both in with our mindset coach. So I'm so pumped because she is just such an incredible human, and I can't wait for you guys to hear her story. Her name is Stacey Prescott. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your life like now?
First, hey, and thank you for having me. My life now is just one of those you hear the term, your life now is what you used to pray for. I'm living that. This is what I used to pray for and never, ever thought I'd have. It's just amazing.
That's awesome. So let's then rewind a little bit and take it back to what it was like growing up. Just give us a little bit of background and then what your Against All Odds story started with.
Okay, so I was raised one of 6 siblings in a very religious home. And my dad was in the Army, so we traveled a lot. And growing up, I resented that because I never felt like I was in one place long enough to put my feet down and find out who I was, or really make a connection with people. I always envied those people that started kindergarten and graduated high school with the same group of people. As I got older and progressed, I really saw what a huge blessing it was growing up a military brat, because you get to experience so much of the world that other people only see in books. And it just broadens the way that you think and see things. A lot of my life has been affected by living in places like Germany and so on and so forth. It just, as a child, before I realized the benefits, I felt so unsteady and ungrounded. Fast forward until high school, my dad retired from the military, so I was finally going to be grounded for a little bit of time. And so he retired to Augusta, Georgia. And I was able to do my sophomore through senior year in one place, and I was so excited. In school, I understood the stuff that was being presented to me. I understood the information, but I had such an incredibly hard time focusing on things, especially if it wasn't interesting to me or I struggled with it. Back in the early 90s, we didn't have terms like ADHD and things like that. Fast forward, I did have ADHD. I struggled with my self-identity because I knew I was smart, but my work didn't reflect that. And I was asked why I was so lazy and why I didn't do things like everyone else and why I was always daydreaming. My self-esteem took a big hit as a child, and it followed me through most of my early adulthood. I was ungrounded, I had very low self-esteem, and I always felt like I was broken, but I couldn't be fixed because it was just me. That's just who I was. Broken. That's how I identified. Everywhere we went, I would try to connect with anybody just to be accepted, and I would say things or present myself in a way that was not authentic, but the way I thought they would receive me best. And I know people, whether they're conscious of it or not, they can tell when you're authentic. And when you're inauthentic, they don't accept you. So the harder I tried to be who I thought everybody else wanted, the less I felt accepted. Graduating from high school, I was just a mess, and I was trying to figure out what's my next step. I have no clue what I want to do. I was self-aware enough to know that Smarts wise, I could do college, but I didn't have the skill set in any other area of my life to do college. So I was like, what else can I do? What could I do that would keep me on track, keep me focused, and something that I could thrive in? And my family has a long history of military service. And I was like, I can do that. I might wake up one day and feel like I don't want to go to work, but I have a sergeant there or a drill sergeant or whatever, and they're not going to let me say no. I'm going to work. So I felt like that kind of a structure would keep me on track to do what I need to do to be successful. I have a deep sense of pride in my nation and my background and heritage and who I am, and I wanted to serve in some capacity. So the military just seemed like a good fit for me.
You also have lived that life, so you're also very aware of what that life entails, which makes it maybe hopefully a little easier.
Yeah, it was familiar enough that I knew what to expect, but it was different enough that it was a new adventure. So I was really excited about that. And I was 18 at the time. I was 17 when I signed the paperwork. I had to have my mom and dad sign the paperwork to let me go in to the Army. But I waited until I was 18 to go to basic. So I waited a few months. Around 19, things just spiraled. I was depressed, and to add that to everything else, and I just felt I needed someone to mentor me, but there was no connection to anyone. I couldn't understand why I had no connection. I just couldn't understand what was wrong with me that no one would accept me, no one would help me, and I just felt broken, depressed, alone, and I started drinking. I don't think I was ever addicted to the alcohol, but I was addicted to not feeling those feelings for a little while.
Yeah, the numbness.
So I self-medicated a lot. Yes, I was just trying to make it go away. So I would either be in formation or working at my job, or I would be out self-medicating with alcohol. And that spiraled way too quickly, and I just lost complete control of myself. And I ended up, after 3 years in the Army, I was pregnant, and I was on orders to go to Germany, which was one of the main reasons that I joined the Army. And at that time, you couldn't be a single parent overseas. So I was given the option to give my son up and go overseas, or I could be honorably discharged. And I chose to get out of the military and keep my son, which was something I never regretted and never will. He is one of the most amazing human beings ever. Add in the pregnancy hormones and the changing life and all of that, and I pretty much just was surviving, coasting, feeling broken, not being able to put words to what I was feeling. And growing up a military brat, growing up in the military culture, then joining the military myself, there's a unspoken rule, at least at that time, you didn't talk about mental health or you would be put out of the military. You were broken. It was seen as something was wrong with you. So that was not something I explored, or I was actually very scared to explore it because of the stigma that was surrounding it. So I ended up marrying a guy. He was a good guy, nothing wrong with him, but we weren't really compatible. I married him because he was what my parents and my religion and everyone told me I should want. And so I told myself that's who I wanted. But when you're not compatible, you get to a point where that doesn't work anymore. I just figured it would somehow work itself out.
There isn't a fake it till you make it in that scenario.
Right? So I'm not throwing shade on him at all because he is a wonderful human being. But I got married, we had kids, I went through 3 years of college, and all of the stress and all of the hormones and all of the unhappiness, it just came to a point where I crashed. And he dealt with depression as well, and he took medication for it, and I identified with that part of it. So I went to the doctor and said, that's what's wrong with me. I'm depressed. And so they put me on the same medication. Unfortunately, years later, I found out I wasn't just depressed. I had bipolar disorder. And if you treat just the depression in a person with bipolar disorder, it just makes things worse. You start a spiral that just goes out of control. And I had a complete breakdown. We had 3 kids at the time. My youngest was still a toddler, and I lost it. And in my mind, the doctors couldn't fix me. No one could tell me what was wrong. I was broken. And in my mind, God had turned his back, didn't want me. I was unlovable. In my mind, my husband was just staying with me because of kids, which wasn't the truth. But in my mind, it was the truth.
You were telling yourself.
Yes. And that voice in our heads is so powerful sometimes. And I lost it. I felt like I had trapped him into a marriage that he couldn't get out of, and that somehow I would contaminate my children and him with my brokenness. And so I did the one thing he told me he could never forgive me for. That way, I couldn't go back. I couldn't try to leave him and separate myself and then get weak and go back and inflict myself on them again. I did the one thing that he told me he would never be able to forgive me for, and it broke our marriage. And it sent me spiraling even more. And I ended up feeling like he was the better parent for the children. So I signed over custodianship to him. We had joint custody, but he had primary custody. And in my mind, he was going to see through all that, and he was going to know that I was acting out of love, some warped sense of love, but trying to save him, and he would actually be my knight in shining armor and save me. I didn't allow him to be human and be mad. And the church that we were members of excommunicated me, so I lost that. Everyone was like, oh, we see your true colors now. You were bad to begin with. And just everyone turned their back on me, and other people that should have loved me for who I was like, see what happens when you act against God. And I was just like, somebody save me, somebody help me. And there were nights I'd lay on the floor and pray to God that he would make me cease to exist. Because I believe we have souls, and I knew if I died, my soul would carry on. But in my mind, God didn't want me, so I would go to hell, and hell would be to feel like that forever. And I couldn't, that was the worst possible outcome for me in my mind. So I was like, dude, no, I don't want to die. I want to cease to exist. Every part of me, my soul and everything, so that I don't have to feel like this anymore. I went into a state of survival, the barest state of survival. I ended up working, one of my favorite stories, I ended up working in the prison system as a correctional officer because I thought I wanted to be a police officer on the road, and I thought that would get my foot in the door. But I ended up working in the prison system here in my state as a correctional officer, and I ended up down here in Valdosta, Georgia, where I am now, and I met my husband in the prison. We were both officers, but I love to tell people the part where we met in prison and then leave the officer
that's
part
like
out.
That's the ... at the end of the story.
Just like the Paul Harvey of the story, but I like to leave that out and let people figure it out for themselves.
I love it.
But
so how old were you?
He's an amazing...
How old were you when this was happening? Like when you separated from your ex-husband and were dealing with just like giving your kids custody to him and all of, like, how old were you in that time period?
I was in my late 20s. I don't have a good grasp on time. My memory is warped from the time frame. I may have been 29 or 30 when I met my current husband. I was in my early 30s. And yeah, I was definitely early 30s. We got together and we got pregnant pretty quick. But I finally was just like, dude, enough is enough. I need help. So I started seeking professional help again. And I was like, okay, this is my last go at it. But at the same time, I was realizing that law enforcement was not where I wanted to be in life. And I decided to finish the education that I had started. But I couldn't go back to the college I started it at the time because it was way across the state. And the job that I had, I couldn't physically go to school. So I enrolled in an online college and I got my bachelor's of science in psychology. I originally did that because I wanted to understand how people think and create believable characters because I wanted to be an author. But in so doing, we got to the section on bipolar disorder. And most people in psychology, every new disorder you study, you're like, I have that. This wasn't like that. This was literally, I was ticking off the boxes. I have that. I have that. And we got to talking about rapid cycling bipolar disorder. And I was like, oh my gosh. I called my therapist up. I'm like, I think I have this. I think I have the answer. He was open enough to assess me for that. I did tell him if I'm just feeling like that because I'm reading the text, that's what we're studying. I accept that, but please would you just assess me for this? And he did. And I got on the medication. It started working. Therapy started working because the medication stabilized me enough. And I was about 32 at the time. And somewhere in there, I had my last child. I have 4 children. But I started not just surviving, really, but I started functioning. And I started finding myself. And after I spent many years, over a decade, in therapy, on medication, trying things, figuring out what worked, what didn't work, starting to be able to open up to the hard work, realizing where my fault laid versus what was brought in by the disorder and how to live with it. At that point, I thought, oh my gosh, I can live. I'm of value. Maybe God didn't turn his back on me after all. And I heard a talk by a leader in the church that I was a member of at the time called Like a Broken Vessel. The leader's name is Jeffrey R. Holland. And it was all about his struggle with depression and how sometimes you're broken down by things. But in the Japanese tradition, I think it's Japanese, they take broken things and pour gold into it to fix it, to make it even more precious, something more than what it was before it was broken. And I felt like that was my refiner's fire. I didn't know the meaning of it. I didn't know what I was being prepared for, but I knew there was a meaning to it. So it made it a little easier to accept what I was going through and that God maybe did have a purpose for my life other than to just let me breathe my last breath and go to hell because I was unworthy, unlovable, unneeded in this life. And that really started to change the way that I thought. And while I was finishing my bachelor's degree in psychology, I was like, okay, you can't really do much in psychology with a bachelor's degree. You have to get a master's degree and so on. And I didn't want to take that much time waiting to find other employment besides the prison. So I went and did something that I had always wanted to do since high school. I've been told that's what you do if you can't go to college. And I really didn't have the people skills for it at the time. And I went to cosmetology school. Always wanted to learn how to do hair.
So when you were growing up, were you more of the creative?
Always.
And was that where you felt calm?
It was. I always thought I was meant to be an artist of some type, but more with words. I was always good with poetry. I was always good with words. I thought I was going to write a book of some kind. And I felt like I could create with words and imagination and dreams the world I wanted to live in because the world I was living in was so horrible to me. So I thought that's where I was going with that. I was the little girl who would sit in front of the mirror and pray God would make her just pretty. I didn't need to be beautiful, just pretty, so people would accept me. I just had such a bad self-image that what I saw in the mirror was really distorted from what reality was. When I look back at pictures, I can see the sadness in my eyes, but I was a cute little kid. So I thought if I learned the beauty industry, I could help other people that felt that way not feel that way. But I was always told that you couldn't make money. I knew I didn't have the people skills for it. So I just thought while I was working on my master's, if I had my diploma in cosmetology and I could do that instead of work at the prison, and then you go into psychology of some sort. And I liked it. I loved doing hair. I liked figuring things out. But where I was getting in college, I was getting A's easily in this hands-on thing where I had to use my mind to picture the result I was going for. I was struggling at some points to grasp it. And now we understand a lot more how people learn, different ways people learn, different ways to present information. But at that time, they presented the information in one way, and it just didn't happen to be the way that I learned best. So my second semester of cosmetology school, I had a teacher that was like, okay, this is not the best option for you. You need to just quit. I was like, no, I don't think so.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? I persisted on. I would work all night at the prison, drive down the road in my uniform to the cosmetology school, change into my scrubs or whatever I was wearing for the day, not do makeup. My hair was however it was at the prison. So I didn't present as a cosmetologist because I was exhausted and tired and just trying to get through. And unfortunately, this person was more about how you presented yourself. And of course, I was slower catching on to things because I was tired. But when I did graduate, I managed to make it work where I got my bachelor's degree and my cosmetology diploma at pretty much the same time. And that teacher's voice was always in my head of you'll never be good in this industry. But walking into the last few days of class one day to cosmetology school, I ran into the psychology instructor at the technical college, and I was like, I have all these industry magazines from my bachelor's I just finished. Do you want them for your class? And he's like, why are you doing the cosmetology thing? Why don't you come give a guest lecture for me? And I did, and he hired me as an adjunct, and I taught intro psychology.
Oh my God.
And I fell in love with I loved teaching. I loved teaching intro psychology. And at the technical level, you can teach with a bachelor's degree. And so that's what I did for the next 3 years. I did hair. I kept my hands in it a little bit, but I never thought, the teacher didn't think I could have a career, so I didn't think I could have a career. So I focused on my career in higher education, and I taught for 3 years intro psychology and a few other technical level classes, and I loved it. And then we got to a point where they needed people with master's degrees that could teach the academic level psychology as well as the technical level psychology. They were more versatile. So I wasn't able to teach anymore. I went into teaching the GED program, English as a second language program, transitioned into the high school services coordinator, which was the dual enrollment program. And then I made it all the way up to grant management at the state level with the technical college system. And that was success. I was managing a grant at the state level. That's success, but I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I dreaded going to work. I was sick to my stomach. I was functioning, but I wasn't happy. But I thought that's what my life was supposed to be.
It was success on paper.
It was success, and I couldn't figure out why am I not happy. I'm successful. I have a bachelor's degree, and I'm managing part of a grant, and it was like, what's going on? The pandemic hit, and my job was located in Atlanta, and for many years, I would drive up to Atlanta for the week and then come home on the weekends. I am about 3.5, 4 hours away from Atlanta. So that was hard, but at the time, those state level jobs were status. And in higher education, that status was important. and the letters after your name were important. But I think I had plateaued with what I could do with a bachelor's degree. And the pandemic hit and my position became more of a virtual position. I was able to stay at home and still work. But I still, even being able to sit up on the couch in my pajamas with my coffee and my computer and work, I was unhappy. And they always told us in cosmetology school that it takes 2 good years to build a clientele. So I started working part-time in a salon, and I still had that teacher in my head, but I met this amazing stylist who had been licensed the same amount of time as me, and she was so talented, and she was goals for me. I wanted to be like her. And instead of looking at what I was producing, she looked at the potential that I had, and she mentored me the best that she could. And it made me see that, okay, maybe I can be okay at this. And then that salon went out of business, and I was like, either I need to get out of the business or I need to really give this a go. So I opened a private salon suite. That was in February of 2022. Fast forward September of 2022, and I was at a point where I was about to lose it. I was not making the money I needed to make. I didn't have the skills I needed to have business-wise, marketing-wise, or cosmetology-wise to really function and be successful. And I was just stressing on that, and I was just disappointed and feeling like a failure again. And I took a class. I had enough money that I was going to invest in either a business class or a skills class. And I felt if I took a business class and marketed myself and was successful in that, they would come in and get a substandard service and not come back. So I chose the skills class first. And that was the catalyst to change everything. Absolutely everything. I got good at the skill that I was learning. And the guy also had a lot of business and mindset stuff sprinkled in. And I was like, dude, will you coach me? What would it take for you to coach me? And he at the time wasn't coaching. He said, but I have a coach. I have a mindset coach, and let me give you his info. Fast forward to Rewired and Brad Bizjack.
That's
oh my
so
God.
crazy.
Isn't it? I listened to a few podcasts while I was waiting on the Success Accelerator. October, the Success Accelerator happened, day one. I knew I was going to sell my firstborn child if I had to. Not really, Devin, I love you. I was going to do whatever it took to get Brad to help me. After day one of Success Accelerator, I was going to do whatever it took. And so in that 5-day challenge, I was a brand new person. In that free 5-day challenge, there was so much value. I was a brand new person. Of course, I did go into Rewired. We met that way. Just so many amazing people. And I started investing. I took that business course and I got better, and my business got out there. My skills got better. I invested in a marketing course. I invested in more skills courses, and I became a natural curl and color expert where I was barely functioning, where I had a teacher tell me to quit early on in my education. I am now, within several hours of my location, the only multi-certified natural curl expert in the area. People travel from hours to see me. I do virtual coaching, so I'm an international stylist because I have coached somebody that lives in London. I've coached somebody from Italy. I've coached somebody in North Dakota. I've coached Arkansas, Texas, Washington State, and I've gone to Utah and taught a live cutting class there on curly hair. My career has just taken off. My business has changed. I moved from the smallest suite in my building to the biggest suite in my building in less than a year.
It's so insane.
The value that I see, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me anymore. I am as authentic as I can be because I found the value in myself. I found my connection to God in such an amazing way. I found a church family who doesn't care what I look like, what I act like. They don't care. They warmly, genuinely accept you exactly as you are and give you a safe space to learn from a preacher that preaches straight from the Bible and is so knowledgeable, and his gift is sharing that knowledge and teaching, and his wife is amazing, and the mercy she has and the caring and compassion she has is just the whole, everybody in that church gives something, and they give it freely and wholly, and they allow you to explore and be and learn, and just every aspect of my life has grown and gotten better and stronger. The relationship with the amazing husband I have, I can't even put into words what it is now. That man is stuck with me for life.
Yes.
And he'll never be rid of me. I was able to see, I knew he was amazing, but now I'm able to see him through a different light. And it just made me love him even more and see the awesomeness that he is. My journey in that short amount of time, just everything became clear to me. I have several kids that have dealt with depression and further things than that, and I was able to guide them through it. Now that I'm not just functioning, I am thriving in this life and living the dream and the prayer that I always had in my heart. I'm able to guide them through it. And it's not just someone telling them because of an education that I had. It's someone that has lived through it and found the way through it. And the impact that I have had just because of being able to rewire the way I think about things and see things and use things. One of my favorite sayings is, life isn't happening to you, it's happening
Mine
for you.
too. That is my favorite.
I am able to redirect everything to see the truth in that. If I don't see it immediately, I can sit down and say, okay, how can I use this for my betterment? And my kids are seeing that, and it's impacting choices that they are making. And I don't just think it, they have told me how inspirational my journey has been to them and how much of an impact that it has had on their life. And because of me breaking that cycle, their children will have it even better than they had it, and so on and so forth. And it's just been such an amazing journey. And I don't curse the day that the bipolar disorder started. Every single struggle that I had, every single tear that I cried has been gold poured into the cracks to make me so much more than I was when I...
It's seeing the purpose and the meaning behind everything that you've gone through. And I think that's the powerful part of life is happening for you and not to you, because there's obviously some really, really tough, dark moments. And in that moment, you feel like you want to give up, and there's nothing better for you, and that you can't give more, and like you want to give up. And then the moment that you start looking at all of that as, this had a purpose and this had a meaning, and this is the meaning behind everything that I've gone through, is right here, right in front of me. And that's just such a powerful statement. I know that it's not created by Brad. However, I get reminded by Brad of that over and over and over again. And it has completely, I know, changed my life. And obviously it's changed so many other lives just like yours. And that is such a powerful story, Stacey. I feel like we roomed together in the same house when we went to Rewired. And I felt like I got to know you, but oh my gosh, I'm like, my heart is bursting. I got to know you so much more today with just our conversation, and how powerful this life has just given you all that purpose and all that meaning, and literally propelled you to some, you have to call it magic. This is like magical what 1 year did in your life. And Not even a year, because that was October Success Accelerator.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That's just insane and so amazing.
Right. And like you say, it's not Brad making the change. He teaches you the tools, but if you're willing to do the work, you make the change.
Absolutely.
It's all in your power
Absolutely.
to do.
I'm already pumped for the next Success Accelerator, so I'll put links in
Yes,
and I just think that then you surround yourself with people that encourage you and want the best for you and are there to empower you and support you and really level you up, push you to level up. And
yes.
I've seen it in our chats and all of that, that how much we push each other to say, okay, I'm glad that this is where you're at, but I feel like you could do this much more. And they see it in us before we see it in ourselves sometimes. And it's so cool to see. I've literally seen you be like, oh yeah, and I manifested $1,000 today. That I was like,
Right.
oh my gosh, are you kidding? This is the coolest thing ever. It is just so cool to see the energy that you have in this brand new look of life, right? This brand new vision of this life that you probably didn't even imagine could be possible before.
No, I'm 47 now, and I want people to know it will come. Just hold on. And the hard work, the medication is not a shameful thing. Take your medicine. And people with cancer and diabetes take medicine. It's okay to take medicine. Go to therapy. Do the groundwork. If I hadn't done those things to be stable, when the opportunity came along for Rewired, I wouldn't have been able to use it. It wouldn't have been of value to me. It definitely do the work that needs to be done. But when you get to the functional part of life, just know that's not it. That's not all there is for you. You can thrive in this life and be genuinely happy. I will have bipolar disorder for the rest of my life, but that doesn't define me. I define the disorder's place in my life. I get to define.
I recommend all the episodes to my kids, but my oldest daughter was diagnosed bipolar very early on. She still struggles with her mental health in general. And to see your story and to hear the thriving when you felt like everything was crumbling, it makes my mama heart hopeful and happy and so excited, just because I know that this is something that so many people struggle with and feel ashamed that they're struggling with it. And rather than it being a hindrance on dictating the rest of your life, it could be what you use to empower the rest of your life. And I see that in your story.
Yes, I have a tattoo. Almost all of my tattoos go along one theme, but this one varies because it reminds me of this. It is the bipolar awareness ribbon, and inside of it is a semicolon. And most people are aware of what the semicolon movement means. And because it's so triggering, I don't really want to go into that. But my mission is to make sure that no one ever earns a semicolon tattoo again. That they're never in a space to need that semicolon tattoo. It's survivable. Everything gets better if you hold on.
I definitely agree. And I think that is so powerful. The story doesn't end here. There's so much more to come. And if you just allow it to come and not give up on it, it's so powerful. Oh my gosh, this was fire. I am so excited for this episode to come out. Is there anything else that you want to say?
I could talk forever on how excited and happy and valued I feel and am and the difference. And I just want to be able to give that hope to anybody that may be listening. I want to share that message. You are cared for. I don't even have to know you. I know your pain. I empathize with you, and you are cared for, you are seen, you are loved. You are worth it.
I love it. I love it.
That's my message.
I'm so excited to see what is to come with you and all of the things that you are doing and the powerful message that you have. And I know that this is only the beginning, and it's so exciting to see. So thank you so much for jumping on with me today, having this conversation, empowering those that are listening. And seriously, this is exactly what the Against All Odds podcast is all about. It's surviving that less than 1% chance, surviving and thriving through life, and showing others that life is always happening for you and not to you. And those stories are just so powerful. And I thank you so very much. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and please leave a review. Let me know how these are helping you, what you would like to listen to. Thank you very, very much for watching. Peace out, guys. Love your life. Bye.